Is the altcoin bottom in? That's the question we'll be answering, as Bitcoin is still hovering around 60k but has been surviving some important events. My question to you is, do you think the altcoin bottom is in? Let us know in the comments beneath. Now let's get started and discuss the latest news, charts and more. Some magic is happening, as currently I'm in an airplane from Dubai to Singapore, the first crypto flight ever. We don't know what's gonna happen on there, but at least I'll be traveling, which means that this video is pre-recorded. And if you want to follow me on my journey for the coming 4 weeks, as I'll be going to Singapore, Dubai, as I said, Thailand, I'll be going to Switzerland to the Crypto Valley Summit, and I'm also going to London and Bitcoin Amsterdam. If you want to follow me on the journey where I just share all the things that I'm reading, listening, my thoughts, make sure to follow me on Instagram, as that's the go-to platform for my content. Now, when we're talking about the markets, we can still make the conclusion that the markets are terrible, but they are getting slightly better, and we can see that in the current sentiment, in which we look at the crypto fear and greed index, which has been 22 in the previous week. And if you recall, 22 is the lowest number that we've seen since the collapse of FTX. So FTX collapsed in 2022, gave us numbers of this level of fear, and currently we have been experiencing the exact same. But we're crawling back up, just like the markets are doing that at this point, where we've reached a number between 30 and 40. Now, there's also an answer to the question of where is the inflow going to come from, as the inflow in the past week has been turning positive. Interestingly enough, the Ethereum ETF is also starting to become positive, and the price action has been negative while there's actual inflow. And you can see that during several sessions in the day, the price is making substantial movement. So we've seen that Asian hours are relatively negative, while European hours are super boring, and USA hours are super positive in the previous week, where the actual inflow is that push that makes the markets go up. Now, we've also had some very big data points in the previous weeks. We've had the labor markets, we discussed that last week, and the labor markets are signaling that a big recession is going to come, as they were the worst data points in the past 3 years. We also had the fact that we've had CPI coming in during this week, and it's a pretty strange reaction on the markets after the data came out, because CPI came in at 2.5%, and core CPI came in lower as well, but the markets were dropping initially based on that data. The interest rates were going up based on that data, where technically, if we look at the data points, the CPI has dropped from 3 to 2.5%. It's the lowest point in 3 years as well. So you would expect that based from that, we're going to have a positive reaction on the markets, as there is a significant likelihood that the Fed is going to cut rates. And that's why since the markets opened, Bitcoin is crawling up. The final big thing that we've seen in the previous week is the debate between Trump and Harris. I'm not a fan of either of the two, but if you are looking from a crypto perspective, then I think you generally want to see Trump become a president, because he's been openly saying that he wants to, promote crypto within the US and regulate it and all the sorts of things. However, if you look at it, then Trump is probably better in the short term, but with his tax regulations and his perspective on the economy, you're likely going to see that the entire US is going to collapse, which in the long term has a negative impact on Bitcoin. While if we are going to get Harris, it is very likely that in the short term it's slightly negative, but in the long term super positive, as she will just continue printing money. And in the end, Bitcoin is going to go up in terms of valuation based on more liquidity that's going to be printed. So the debate took place, and currently Harris is ahead of Trump. We don't know where it's going to go to, but at this point Trump is not leading. Now, there are a few events in the coming period that you should be looking at that are very important to keep an eye on. We've got Token 2049 coming up, where you can expect a lot of events taking place. And the second thing is that we've got the Fed on the 18th of September likely doing a rate cut. I think they're going to do 25 bips, but some people expect 50 bips to happen. And on September 17th, EigenLayer is going to go live with its token Eigen. So there's a lot of buzz happening around that token, where we can expect that this is the big technological advancement that we were looking for in this cycle. Now the question remains, have we seen the actual low on the altcoins, and are we going to expect a lot of upwards momentum, or are we going to expect another big fall? The title of this video is the altcoin bottom in? And I think we are there, but we need to find an answer to the question. And in order to get there, we need to look at some specific charts to find that answer. And the first chart that we're looking at is others divided by Bitcoin. Generally, I don't really care about USD valuations because it doesn't tell you anything in terms of strength of the altcoin in the crypto markets. For instance, if Bitcoin doubles and your altcoin doubles against the US dollar, it doesn't tell you anything. You just want to know whether an altcoin is doing better than Bitcoin. That's why we look at the altcoin market capitalization, which is others divided by Bitcoin. And as you can see, this chart has been looking into a new bottoming procedure where we are retesting the low that we've hit in May 2023. Again, we are back at those levels. And we need to make a side note that generally ETH against Bitcoin is the prime indicator of up or downwards movements of this chart. And ETH against Bitcoin is still very weak. But if we look at the weekly time frame, then you can see that during the summer, in this case June, we find ourselves into a new bottom. This year is different because we've had a case that we had the Japanese yen carry trade bringing down the markets for one more time, but we're still in a bottoming procedure given the fact that on several time frames we're currently making this bullish divergence. As you can see on the 3-day, we are making one here, and on the daily time frame it's even more obvious that we are creating a bullish divergence, indicating that the price is likely going to follow through with the momentum here, that the indicator is already leading and the price needs to follow. The same can be said on total tree divided by Bitcoin. Total tree is basically anything outside of the top 10 valued against Bitcoin. Again, I want to know what the altcoins are doing against Bitcoin, because then I get an answer on the question that I'm asking myself. And then I also know whether altcoins are under or overvalued against Bitcoin. And in this case, I think they are heavily undervalued. As this chart is currently breaking out of the structure of a falling wedge, we start to fight a crucial resistance. And on the weekly time frame, we are making lower lows on the price already since June. That was June 2023. And since then, the indicator is making higher lows, which makes a big difference between price action and indicator action, which means that either of the two is going to go back to the other one, making it equal again. And in this case, I suspect that the altcoins are going to rally back up, through which the indicator is already leading. There's one thing that we need to make sure though, and that is that we're currently still seeing a lot of weakness when it comes to ETH against Bitcoin. So Ether against Bitcoin was also providing a bullish divergence, but couldn't break through crucial resistance levels and is currently falling down even more. ETF inflow is zero, Bitcoin starts to show some more strength, and Ethereum itself is not doing great for the token. But the ecosystem of Ethereum is doing massive. And I think most of the Ethereum ecosystem coins are outperforming ETH and are outperforming Bitcoin. As we can see with Optimism, for instance, that Optimism is at its highest point since the end of July. We see that we've had a crash in July taking place, a bounce took place through which this is a crucial resistance zone that we need to break through. But Optimism has been going up by more than 30% since the Japanese yen carry trade took place. From there, we are up 30%, facing the crucial resistance, and you can see that against Bitcoin, altcoins are outperforming Bitcoin at this point, but not getting any sort of interest on social media or whatsoever. Likely this will come in the moment that they break through crucial levels or when the expansion starts to take place. But Optimism is such an example of the fact that EigenLayer is going to happen. Ethereum is somewhat fundamentally breaking out, but also likely that the altcoin bottom is actually in. And the prime example for that is Aave, which is currently making the highest point against Bitcoin since December of 2023, which is great. It's starting to show some momentum. It has been making a low in April of 2024 and started to break through the resistance zone again. So that one is likely starting up a new cycle as we're starting to make a new higher high and we're looking for a new higher low. There's also more revenue being generated by Aave. And when we look at the USD value, it reached the highest point since April of 2022. So despite the fact that people are assuming that we're currently still in a downwards trend, actually Bitcoin pairs are neutral and some are trending upwards at this point. So you can make more Bitcoin by being in altcoins. The next question is, which altcoins do you need to be in for the coming period that are likely going to outperform Bitcoin? As discussed, altcoins are waking up, whether you like it or not, but they are waking up, which means that there are some very interesting ones that you can go for. And you need to make a theory on why you're looking for certain altcoins. So I don't believe that positioning yourself into every altcoin makes sense. You need to position yourself into altcoins that are likely going to have a narrative that does well. That's why I think that anything surrounding the Ethereum ecosystem or eigenlayer is going to do really well and has proven to do so. And the second thing is that you're looking at coins that have been bouncing up substantially in the past weeks. So that tells you that there is some certain strength. And for some projects, there's an actual reason because they generate revenue, or at least they have been increasing in the amount of transactions. So if you combine these two elements of providing yourself a thesis for your trading portfolio, then I think the most obvious ones to have at this point are Aave and Optimism. I think that due to the eigenlayer and Ethereum ecosystem, Optimism is the easiest one to have in your portfolio. And also DeFi surrounding Ethereum has been doing great. So I think that having Aave or continuously having Aave in your portfolio is a must to have. And I think if you have Optimism and Aave as examples, you can also say Arbitrum is a great one to have in your portfolio, or Compound is a great one, or even if you want to increase your risk, you could look at things like Rocket Pool, which we discussed in the previous video. So I think those are elements that you can have in your portfolio for the coming period. And if you want to know more about my portfolio and everything that I have in my portfolio, in the current portfolio, looking for a return in the coming months, make sure to tune into my portfolio update, which I'll be releasing in next week's video. I said it last week, Rectember is bad, October is great. And until today, it's still the case. We've seen Bitcoin dropping substantially. We've seen altcoins making new lows or retesting the lows. But we also see that since that moment, altcoins are starting to wake up. So when we look at my strategy, I don't change that much. I think we are seeing the elections are coming up. The Fed is going to do rate cuts. We're seeing eigenlayer that's going to go live. And what we underestimate is the fact that token 2049 is going to happen. So what we see with a few of the companies that we have is that there is a lot more interest coming from the space where projects want to go live. Volumes are starting to wake up. Marketing deals are also starting to wake up, which means that I think you just need to be patient at this point to see what we're going to have in the coming period. And I think everyone is preparing for a massive Q4, especially since also China is increasing the liquidity. Given that there is a recession coming up, there's a likely case that we're going to have an increasing amount of liquidity being pushed into the markets. And there's this very easy equation that more liquidity equals higher price for Bitcoin. It's just a standard, which I think that we are currently at the 2019 to 2020 period where liquidity is slowly waking up, and that we are actually at the reversal at this point where we are likely going to do well with crypto. So that's why I'm staying into DeFi and the Ethereum ecosystem with my strategy. I hope you have been enjoying this update. As I said, follow me on Instagram where you can see everything that I'm doing on all the trips and my thoughts on the markets. Next week we're going to make some new content. We are going to make a video about an altcoin that we like. We're going to make a video about a portfolio that I'm currently having. Make sure to subscribe and I'll see you again next week. Ciao!